Hello, and what a treat we have for you. A special Books Alive program that we taped at the American Library Association convention in Washington, D.C. This is going to feature some of the very best children's and young adult authors and illustrators that are publishing today. Now, before I get to those interviews, let's get a better idea of the scope of this amazing annual event. The American Library Association is the oldest and largest library association in the world. More than 25,000 librarians, educators, writers, and publishers attend the ALA convention each year. During the event, the attendees learn about topics like new technology, censorship, and literacy in meetings and programs. The massive exhibit floor includes over 950 companies, it's huge, displaying their latest books, videos, computer software, and other materials for today's libraries. It's gorgeous. You walk through there and there are books everywhere. There are also performance stages where poets and authors read their latest works.
If you've seen this day, you know what it feels like to have a razor blade in the meaty side of your jaw. There are ways a man is tortured that only he can tell you.
And as you stroll through the exhibits, you see well-known authors, you can't even believe who you're looking at, signing their books for librarians and fans of all ages. The ALA convention is also where the most prestigious awards in the children's literature are given, the Newbery and the Caldecott Medals and the Coretta Scott King Awards. We were fortunate to catch up with one of those award-winning authors, Tony DiTerlizzi, whom we also saw on the exhibit floor signing his newest book, The Search for Wandla, for some of his readers. Tony DiTerlizzi writes captivating fantasy and science fiction works, often based on fairy tales. So I asked him, why is he so drawn to fairy tales and myths for his inspiration?
I like fairy tales,
Yes.
actually, and I grew up on a lot of fairy tales. My mom read us all the Grimm's fairy tales, Andrew Lang's Rainbow Fairy books, Anderson's, obviously, and I love those types of stories, and there's also a lot of them I return to as an adult. I've returned to them periodically over my life, and I get something different out of them.
Why?
And I think as we mature and our experiences in life change, that from child to young adult to middle-aged adult, you just, when you turn around and look at something like that, you just see different facets of it. Maybe you take a little something out of it. I think that's why so many books are evergreen. Certain books like Peter Pan or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, I think that's why people continually return to them. I think there's something there.
Now you returned to Kenneth Grahame when you did Kenny and the Dragon.
That's right.
Was that one of your favorites?
It was. I'm a huge fan of Kenneth Grahame's work. He did Dream Days, and he did obviously The Wind in the Willows, which most people know. And that actually, we were kind of in between Spiderwick Chronicles books, and we were finishing them up. And I had a little tiny version of the Reluctant Dragon, and I said, I would love to just reset the type and maybe like watercolor Ernest Shepard's drawings. Just do this big Valentine to this book. And my editor, Kevin, bless him, he was like, with all due respect to Mr. Shepard, I think people would want to see your vision of what it looks like. So, I don't know. So I did some sketches, sent him, and then he read it over the weekend. He said, well, with all due respect to Mr. Grahame, I'm wondering if you could retell it. And I went, yeah, and I went,
there's a challenge, baby.
Yeah. So I kind of went at it with like the same idea as certain fairy tales, like the Grimm's fairy tales, where they do get retold periodically, and I wanted to, my hope was that the Reluctant Dragon, people would always go back to the original source. Obviously there's a multitude of references in it throughout the book, but maybe it would become more evergreen and more kids would know about it. So hopefully like 5 years from now, 2 years from now, next year, somebody will go, I can do it better than Tony did. And it'll be that thing.
I don't think so. But you're breathing new life into it.
I hope so.
All right, now you decided to breathe new life into something else too. The Search for Wandla. I want to say Wonderla, but it is not Wonderla, it is Wandla. Okay,
Yes.
Now this is, let's say Alice going up instead of down.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, that's
I
how
like that.
that's
That's
how I
good. I like
experienced
that.
it.
Yeah,
That's my
okay.
personal experience. Okay. So this is awesome, Tony.
Thank you.
This is great.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's a fairy tale in its own right, though, wouldn't you say?
It uses a lot of fairy tale motifs. So you've got like Queen ruling a mysterious land. You have a girl lost in the woods. She makes friends with characters in those woods to help her kind of get along. But instead of them being more fantasy, it's more robots and aliens and space spaceships and things
Yes.
like that. And so I wanted to be able to take the things that I love about those old fairy tales that we talked about and figure out a way to make them a little more 21st century. So they speak maybe a little more to the modern kids. So she's got technology that she's using. But I also wanted to be able to obviously make a statement about the world we live in and what the world may hold. And so, I suppose one could say it's post-apocalyptic, but maybe different than the usual, what we think of when we think post-apocalyptic. I think The Road, when I think post-apocalyptic, I can't find food.
Oh no.
You turn into a hot dog kind of thing, So I wanted it to be more of an upbeat post-apocalyptic
Well, it
world.
definitely is, and I was telling you, I really related to being a mother, a multi-unit
Utility, task,
helpful
robot.
Yay! Which is what we all
Yeah,
are.
yes,
All right, now
yes.
I want you all to beware, because this is a man who wants to rule the world one child at a time, okay? But thank you so much for coming to be with us
Thanks for
today.
having
It was
me.
so great.
It was
The
my
time was
pleasure.
way too short, but
Thank you.
the new book is The Search for Wandla. Thank you so much, Tony.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm so excited to be joined today with the wonderful Amy S. Hansen. If you don't know her books yet, that's because she is a science writer. And you write mostly for children, Amy?
I do. I used to write for adults as well, but I find it much more fun to write for kids.
For kids? Are you a kid at heart?
I am, and I get to explore the things I don't know, like where
Yes.
bugs go in the wintertime. That's something I didn't know about, and that's why I wanted to write about
This
it.
is relatively new, isn't it?
It came out in February.
Okay, so bugs and bugsicles. So what is a bugsicle?
A bugsicle is a frozen bug.
Oh,
So some of them
wow.
freeze solid. If you open to the inside cover, it freezes solid in
Oh,
the winter.
wow.
The Arctic woolly bear caterpillar, and then it thaws out again.
Oh my goodness.
And I just thought this was so cool because most animals can't do that.
They don't adapt. Now, as I read through this, I found that bugs, like ladybugs, bugs that we see all the time, a praying mantis, they have amazing ways of coping with winter that we don't even think about.
Right, and this was, my kids asked me the question of where do they go?
Yes.
And I realized I'd asked that question when I was about 3 and 4, and you're so close to the bugs, and you want to know this.
Yeah.
And then you forget as you grow up. And
Well, you lose a little bit of the sense of wonder. And, children have such a wonderful sense of wonder, and I think that this book is going to really bring that sense of wonder back to them, bring it back alive.
well, and the illustrations are so bug-centric. So
They
that
are.
You're working from the
Yes.
insect's point of view.
Here's the amazing praying mantis. These illustrations are so great because they
Aren't they?
come right up to you. They're really terrific. Okay, now you've got another book that you were very kind enough to bring in today called Touch the Earth, which is a multimedia book about the Earth's biomes.
Right.
And you did this in conjunction with the National Federation of the Blind?
They helped pay for it. They helped
Okay.
fund it, and NASA funded much of it. So it's a government publication. It was Alyssa Levine's design. I did the writing.
Okay.
The concept is that kids who can't see a map don't have any idea of how big a desert actually is.
Yes.
So they can feel it. This is a textured.
It's wonderful. You can just run your hand over it, and the key is on this side, and you can use the key to then find the different biomes.
And if you're using it in a classroom, there are DVDs in the back.
Uh-huh.
You're listening to the script about the forests of North America at the same time you're touching it and feeling how big it is.
I know this book is written for children who cannot see, but I think any child would really enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well,
These
thank
books
you.
are just wonderful. She is an editor and a writer, and she has her own independent imprint. And I asked her a lot of questions about that, but Laura Geringer, welcome.
Thank you.
This is very fun, and she's here today because she has written a book. This isn't your first, though, is it?
No. My first picture book actually was A Three Hat Day,
Three Hat Day.
which is celebrating its 25th anniversary in print.
And who did you do that for?
I did that for HarperCollins.
HarperCollins,
And
okay.
the 25th anniversary edition is being published this year by First Book, which is a wonderful charity that gets books into the hands of needy kids.
Yes. How Wonderful.
So-
what a great thing to have happen. Okay, so here she is today with Boom Boom Go Away. Now, I have talked her into singing on camera.
Oh, God.
So we're going to open this up so that we all get the sense of this, because this is like a little boy who won't go to bed. Can you imagine that? And okay, why don't you tell us how this began, how it goes? That would be better.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, my oldest son, Adam,
Uh-huh.
who's now 23, on his way to becoming a sound engineer.
Wow.
When he was very small,
Mm-hmm.
he was a late talker, and he always loved music and sound.
Uh-huh.
And so when he was about 3 years old, he wanted to play the piano, but his hands were still too small.
Ah.
So we enrolled him in a Delcros music class, which was a wonderful kind of joyous experience for him, where he got to play a lot of instruments and do a lot with rhythm and sound and so forth.
Wow.
So he came home from that class singing the Little Gnome song.
Which you are now going to share with us. The Little Gnome
It was
Song.
just one verse, which
Okay.
is the first verse.
But you have to
and
see the picture while she sings the song. Okay, go ahead.
So it was, there was a little gnome who lived in his little home, playing on his big bass drum, boom, boom. And when his mama said, you had better go to bed, he said, hush, don't spoil the rhythm of my drum, boom, boom, go away, boom, boom, go away. So he
That's
sang
great.
that verse about 1 million times, and I sang it with him. And then eventually we started improvising and started adding more verses.
There was a little prince who made everybody wince.
Right.
How do you say this, Laura?
So,
Is it nee, nee?
Nee,
nee,
nee.
nee.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And you keep going.
right.
Oh my God.
And on the end papers, all the sounds and all the
sounds.
instruments are
Yes, look at- isn't that
identified.
great? Now, you yourself were actually asked to leave an orchestra, weren't you?
I was a terrible member
Of the orchestra?
of the orchestra in school. They asked me to play a flute and a piccolo, and I was a disaster.
Nothing worked?
Nothing
So you were
worked. Nothing
excused.
worked. I was, yes.
Well, thank goodness you found your calling here. Now, tell me a little bit about editing. If somebody submits a manuscript to you, what is the thing that you like, okay, I know I'm taking this one?
Well, it depends. Sometimes it can make me cry. You know, it moves me.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just the language, the beauty of the language.
Okay.
For
All right.
example, yes.
So
you know,
something
and-
really powerful, one way or the other,
Yes.
really talks to you.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And I
All
just
right.
feel like I can't not publish this book.
All right,
you
it's
know.
meant to be.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
Exactly.
joining us here today. And I know plenty of librarians across the country are going to be singing the gnome song, boom, boom, go
I hope
away.
so. I'm going to set up a website, and I hope people
Great.
write to me and
What will
give
it
me
be?
new
Do you
verses
know? Yeah,
for
oh,
Boom Boom.
Oh,
yes.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, should
'Cause
they
I-
look for it under your name?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I'd love for parents and children who are reading it together to be making up their own verses.
Great, and that would connect us all.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
this
you.
is really fun.
It's been a pleasure.
great. We are entering a very, very special world with a very, very special lady, and I want you all to meet, because as I am meeting for the first time, the wonderful Liz Garten Scanlon. Welcome. Welcome to Books Alive.
Thanks,
It's
Barb. It's
wonderful
good to
to
be
have
here.
you here. It really is. Now, you have absolutely made magic with your book called All the World. And I would love for you to tell the story of how this came to be. With your
Oh.
editor, didn't you kind of hole up with it?
Thank you. Yes, I did. It started as just sort of wordplay, brainstorming words that were connected. And like the very first verse, which is rock, stone, pebble, sand. And from there, I started realizing that all of the little things in the world that were connected led to larger things in the world that
Yes.
are connected, and in the end, it's those things that connect all of us. And so, what began as sort of rhyming wordplay, which is where I like to spend a lot of my time as an author. I really love at a really basic level, playing with language. What began as that became sort of a bigger conceptual piece about what connects all of us. And originally, I was in Los Angeles at the SCBWI conference, and
that's the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, for those who don't know.
That's right. Okay. And I was speaking with our editor, Alan Johnston, there, and sort of reinvigorated this, what was just the beginnings of this book. And it's true, after that I went home and spent a few weeks just completely pulled up and absorbed.
Wow.
Completing it.
All right. Now, Liz, talk about what you are so gently, warmly, nurturingly communicating to people in here. Because the idea, as you said a minute ago, is that the world is big.
Right.
But just like the moment you and I are having right now, this is our world.
Right. So to me, in the end, there's sort of this large message, I hope, about connection between everyone and everything in the world. And my understanding of that is instead of going to the very big, thinking about all the very little things, which is also the part of the world that children can access, because even imagining the whole world is really challenging for little children. Whereas imagining the world of a sandcastle or the trunk of a tree is really accessible. And so if you use those as sort of building blocks, which is sort of the way the book works, there's kind of 4-line building blocks before an all the world line all the way throughout. And so imagining those little things as building blocks to get to the big concept.
So you sort of begin with where you are, and then you would be able to move out from that if you wanted to, but just appreciate what you have in the moment.
Right, yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
Okay.
And I think Marla Frazee, who's the illustrator, amazing illustrator of this book, aided that in that all of the sort of smaller lines, the butter, flour, big black pot, things like that, are on little sort of vignette pages, and then the larger lines, the all the world pages, are really, really expansive.
Really big, really beautiful.
So it's sort of taking those little thoughts and then opening wide up.
I have a 3-year-old grandson, and I can't wait to give him this book, because I know that even as a 3-year-old, he's going to understand what you're talking about with the immediate, but you're going to stretch his mind so beautifully. It's so wonderful.
I hope so.
Yes.
I hope so. And you know, the other thing that kids at that age just really love is listening to rhyme. So even things that they're not clicking with necessarily on a super rational, articulated level, just feels pleasurable, I think, because rhyme works
and
that
it's
way
fun.
for kids.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh,
thank you
you
for this wonderful, inspiring book. I mean, you're reaching children in a whole different place than a lot of other books do, and it's just really unique and special.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to write, and thanks for the invitation to chat.
Absolutely. The lady who's joining me now on the red carpet is one who loves to write about multicultural, other cultures, children that have lives in other worlds. And I'm so delighted to have her with me here today. It is Miss Peggy Dietz Shea.
Thank you, Barb.
Welcome. This is just wonderful. Now, we all know, I think you're practically a household name with The Whispering Cloth and 10 Mice for Ted. I know those are books that I've known for many years. Do you still get a lot of energy from kids about those?
I do. The Whispering Cloth just celebrated its 15th year in print.
Wow.
And it is a book that really resonates with teachers as well. And 10 Mice for Ted is just adorable. I still marvel at the incredible embroidery that is. All the illustration for the whole book is done in Vietnamese embroidery by this older man in this little village and outside of Hanoi, and this is a wonderful story to share with children.
And we were talking about, to me, this book, Noah Webster, Weaver of Words, was like a little bit of a departure, but you told me you'd actually done some other American history, but you took up Noah here, and I was very impressed with how his sense of words binding us as one. Where did you ever find that out?
Well, in his own writings.
Really?
And that, I think, makes him such a compelling character for a writer to write about, because he's a writer himself and suffered the ups and downs of the industry that we suffer. Right.
Back then, too?
Yeah, and he kind of pioneered book promotion as well. He would get on his horse and go from state to state,
that's great.
finding printers that would print his book.
Oh, wow.
And he also taught America how to read, and he also was a proponent of bringing literature written by American authors into the school readers, and really developing the American body of literature. And he also wrote stories for children, so he might even be one of America's first children's story writer.
Isn't that something? I mean, you think of Mark Twain, or, you know, is he before?
Oh yes, yeah. He's writing at the turn of the century from a lot of his educational work and putting together anthologies and all that was happening in the late 1790s.
Oh my goodness.
So he was a real education reformer and very much into literature and getting the literature into the hands of children.
Wow, so quite the pioneer. Now you've got something in your hands over there, and
Yes,
that is
Abe in
your
Arms.
latest, Abe in Arms. Now this one is for a much older audience and takes on an incredibly challenging topic.
The plight of child soldiers has been written about, and it's not only happening in Africa. I mean, we've got history, America has history of children fighting in the Civil War. So I'm not pointing fingers here at African countries at all. But what I undertake in many of my books is to address the aftermath of violence and how it affects children, because often young people feel that they're powerless to make change. And what can I do to stop child soldiering? There's really not much I can do besides bringing awareness and giving money away and supporting groups that rehabilitate them. But what happens to the child himself when he's taken from such a violent time, real violence, and placed in America where violence seems so casual and it is so much part of our entertainment, and he finds that very sick and troubling to him, and it brings back a lot of horrible memories. Also with sex, there's sexual abuse in the book, and when that abuse prevents him from having meaningful relationships with girls in the United States.
He really has post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is something we hear about our adult soldiers having.
Exactly.
And you're bringing it into the children's world. Well, as I read this, I just experienced so many strong feelings, and I think anybody would. And thank you so much for taking this on. I think it's an amazing topic. And so she's really writing for, in this book, older kids, but I think it's something that they would really enjoy, because it's stuff they're going to hear in the news, but bringing it down to a real personal level. And then Noah Webster, Weaver of Words, is just a wonderful introduction to a man in a way that you've never thought about him before. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for the great books.
Thank you.
They're terrific.
Thank you.
Peggy Dietz Shea is an author who takes on tough, multicultural subjects with incredible sensitivity, as well as some of the more traditional ones. We're going to take a short break here, but stay with us. I'll have more author interviews from the American Library Association convention, including ones with two longtime favorites, Mem Fox and the very, very exciting Ellen Hopkins. We'll be right back.
If a natural disaster happened and we were outside the home, we would probably all meet, I'll say, around the grocery store, you know.
We would all meet at a bus stop. That is our meeting place.
Well, we would probably just meet out in front of the house.
We'd probably meet at our neighbor's house.
If you have no plan, then you can just plan what to do as it happens.
No matter where you live, life in the ocean depends on you. Do your part to help protect it. Recycle and dispose of your trash properly. To learn what you can do, go to keepoceansclean.org.
We're back with the second half of our special edition of Books Alive at the American Library Association annual meeting in Washington, D.C. One of the treats of attending a meeting like this is getting to meet new and upcoming authors. This next author, Marina Budhos, is a thinker who explores the experience of young adult Muslims and other recent immigrants to our country, showing us the American dream from a different perspective. We began by talking about her post-9/11 book, Ask Me No Questions. The author who's joining me right now is a very thoughtful person. I'm talking about Miss Marina Budhos. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Now, when I first read Ask Me No Questions, it was such a eye-opener for me because it was, you know, at the time, right after 9/11, but you're looking at things from another perspective and how other people are experiencing the same history we're all living together. Is that the time when you wrote it and why you chose to write that?
Well, absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
it grew out of that period. I was aware of what was going on and the confusion. And as you say, part of what I was interested in was sort of widening the story.
Yes.
We knew one story of how we were impacted, but there really was this whole other group of people who were affected in profound ways, whose lives were turned upside down.
Talk about who the family that's in
That's
the book.
right. So this is Ask Me No Questions, and
hold it up.
we'll hold that up.
Sure.
And this is an undocumented Bangladeshi family. And in the period after 9/11, really about the year after, there was a lot of confusion in Muslim communities because they were being asked to register as part of the Patriot Act.
Oh my.
And what happened was families didn't know what to do because should they register, should they not? And many families fled to the Canadian border.
Marina, what
hoping.
does register mean?
They were told all Muslim men age 18 and over were told to register with the Immigration and Homeland Security. If they were from a Muslim country. What really happened though is it became a crackdown. And many of these men were either deported or detained indefinitely. It really was an atmosphere of fear and confusion in the wake of this.
Now you centered this on sisters, really, though.
That's right. It really is, you know, for all the political climate,
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's about a crisis that a family is facing. It's about two sisters, one who's a high-achieving, perfect girl, and the other who's something of a slacker in the shadow. And what happens to them when really their parents are off stage dealing with this crisis, their father's detained, and what are they going to do? And will they come out of the shadows?
Yes, and that one girl just rises up for the moment, and the other one just kind of begins to fall apart when faced with all that stress and fear. All right, now you continued the story in a way.
Yes.
Because with Tell Us We're Home, you've picked it up with 3 girls. They're 7th graders, aren't they?
8th grade, actually.
8th grade, okay.
They're about to go into high school, but although they meet when they're in 7th grade, that's right.
All right, and every one of them's mother is a maid or a nanny, so you're looking at the American dream from the other side of it in a way.
Yes, exactly. It is. I'm so glad you picked up on that, because
totally.
that's exactly what I was thinking about. After I had finished with Ask Me No Questions, there's really more to be said about this way. It's not, in this case, about being undocumented, but you can be invisible in another way.
Yes.
And, you know, part of what I was observing is immigration and immigrants are all around us, right? They're very much a part of suburban life now. They're who cut our hedges. The nannies are taking care of our children. So I really started to think about, what about the children of the people who really hold up our lives in so many ways? And so yes, it's about how their American dream is colliding with our American dream in many ways.
And they always seem to me that they have one foot in each world. I watch the Asian children of my, friends of my own children, and I see the struggle that they have to, speak the language or live the culture in their home. But when they go to high school or middle school, they have a whole nother world. Right. And in fact, as you look at the American children, I don't think that you had such a high opinion of some of them, actually.
Well, I think there's a certain element of obliviousness that these children have, and a sense of entitlement that is so foreign to my characters, who are just edging their way in. and also carry so much. They're the ones who are making a home for their mothers.
Yes.
Their mothers are depending on them in ways, they're translators for their mothers, in ways that I don't think most American children would understand, who in many ways are being
Not that
ushered
early.
in.
Yes. There's a maturity in your characters. Well, you can tell that these books are just amazing, and they are just wonderful looks at sort of another side of the American experience, and they're great reads for, I would say, what, about 10 to 14?
Exactly.
Is that your age range?
Exactly. I would
Okay.
say Ask Me No Questions can even go, I think both of them can go a little higher, maybe to 15, 16.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for writing the books, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
It was
you.
great to meet you.
Thanks.
Really. And talk about excited. I feel like a little kid in a candy store because I have the one and only Mem Fox sitting next to me. And welcome, Mem.
Thank you.
This is so wonderful. Now, how many books have you got published right now?
Look, I think it's probably 38 books by now.
38.
Yes.
Wow. I think everybody must have time for bed in their house. I think it's a must shower gift for every baby that's born.
Thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely. And Koala Lou, Harriet, you drive me wild. You know, Tough Boris. I mean, we could go on forever. They're just so fun and so
Thank you,
wonderful.
thank you.
But I think you're in town for your new one, and that is Let's Count Goats.
Yes, I am.
Oh, this is too fun. Okay, now talk about how you wrote this, what you did with it.
It came about because I had written a book called Where is the Green Sheep?
Yes.
And there have been, I don't know, 100 drafts of this book since that time. And it's so short, and when people look at it, they will say to themselves, you know, I could do that. And I could do that in one afternoon.
No.
Because it looks so simple.
Exactly.
But the simplicity is what is difficult.
Is the genius.
And
is
what
the
I'm
genius.
thrilled about in this book is that it's a counting book without numbers. The children have to count. They have to count on every page.
Yes.
There is a question asked by the reader. There's a lot of interaction between reader and child, which I love in a book because I want parents to bond with each other, to bond with books.
Yes.
So I just want this glue,
Huge bonding
this
thing,
huge
yes.
gluey mass, you know.
You have grandchildren, don't you?
One.
One. Oh boy.
Just 5 months old.
Oh, you're going to have a good time. What a lucky baby. Lucky baby. All right, now let's talk about your genius here, because you're talking about interaction and connecting the parent and the child in the book. What do you say to parents whose children don't want to sit down with them? They can't sit on that couch for 1 minute with a book. What do you say?
I
Let's get
say
the expert.
if they cannot sit still on the couch, then, and people often make the excuse, oh, I can't read to my child because they won't sit still and they eat the book and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Frankly, if you have read a book over and over and over and over again to a child in a cot who cannot move, doesn't even roll over yet.
A cot being a crib.
A crib.
Yes.
So if they're in the crib, they're not turning over yet even, let alone crawling. They get hooked onto a particular book, and if you read that book over and over and over, you know it by heart. So when the children are out of the crib and they're in the car,
yes,
they are trapped. They have to hear the story. You know it by heart.
Tell it.
You know, tell it. It's time for bed, little mouse, little mouse.
Oh.
Darkness is falling all over and the little voice comes from the back seat. Out. It's time for bed, little goose, little goose.
Yes.
The stars are out and on the
Oh.
You know, they can't.
That's
also,
brilliant.
between 1 and 18 months, if they're herring around the house
Yes.
and won't sit still for a book,
right,
that's exactly the right development at that time.
Okay.
That's when they hare around.
Okay.
And that's often when parents begin to read a story to children.
Okay.
That's why you've got to start in the hospital.
Oh my goodness. So
You
you
have to
start
start
day
in the
one.
hospital.
You start day one.
Actually, we started day 2 with the grandchild.
Okay.
Because the birth was traumatic and he was very premature.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
the
dear.
neonatal ward was very crowded.
Uh-huh.
And on day 2, I opened one of those 4 doors, you know, the little round doors on the
Yes.
humid crib.
Yes.
And I put a book to that hole, that window.
Wow.
And I read him the same book for 2.5 months through the hole in the window.
So you are a firm believer in repetition.
Rhyme, rhythm, and repetition.
Okay.
And brevity. You know, people read too long a book to children.
Okay.
They read too complicated a book.
Okay.
It must be very, very short.
All right.
Under 3 minutes for very little kids.
Okay.
Lots of rhythm, lots of repetition,
All right.
and lots of rhyme.
All right. You have heard it from the guru of reading of the entire planet. And thank you so much for joining us.
My great
this
pleasure.
was just
Thank you.
fabulous.
Thank you
You're
so
great.
much. Thank you.
If you have a girl in your house, I have got the book for you, and this is the lady that wrote it. Welcome, Amy Ignatow. Am I saying it right?
You're Ignatow. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Okay. Now, you are not just an author, but you just told me you're a cartoonist.
Yes, I've been a cartoonist for years. I did a web cartoon called Ig City, and I did freelance illustrations ever since graduating from art school. So
wow,
more trained as an artist than a writer.
And then you brought it all together in this fabulous book called The Popularity Papers.
I did. It was so nice to actually be able to both write and draw and put it all together and have it all be my own, work. It's great.
Now you've got two young ladies. I want to show them how this looks. She wrote this. This is her own handwriting in here, and it makes it look exactly like a girl's journal. And two girls are doing this.
Yep.
Okay.
So we have Lydia, who is writing in the blue. This is their page on boys, and then you have Julie, who is writing in the black. And so you can distinguish between the two characters.
Now these two girls have decided they are going to do research on this for the social improvement and general betterment of these themselves. Because these other girls are popular, and they want to understand how that works.
Well, junior high is coming up, and you don't want to go into junior high completely unprepared.
Yes.
Because what could happen? Terrible things could happen. You could turn into Lydia's sister and go, dye your hair black and have a lot of weird piercings. So they don't want to do that.
Right.
They want to figure out how to be popular. They figure one more year until junior high. So we'll observe the girls who are popular now. We'll record them. We'll make attempts to emulate them.
And they start off with the girl who has the blonde streak in her hair.
She's so glamorous, that Gretchen.
We could be just like her.
With her blonde streak.
So they give it a try.
So they ask, the older sister, how would you go about dyeing your hair? Bleach, if you want to go lighter. She fails to specify, don't use the bleach that you find under your sink. So don't use the bleach you find under your sink. I had to do research and look at what happens, and there were pictures on the internet, and I was like, oh, that's terrible. I should definitely use this in the book. So yeah, so it doesn't work out for them so well.
We're talking baldness.
Bald patch. Bald patch. Expensive haircut to cover it up. Pain.
And I love when the girl tries out for the talent show or the musical, and she ends up singing the mattress commercial.
There was a mattress commercial, I don't know if it was national, but it was in Philadelphia for years, where they were just singing, mattresses. And so that's where that sort of came from, when something gets stuck in your head. And then you freak out and you sing that instead
and you
of
put it in a book.
What you were supposed to sing. You're not going to get the lead.
You gave the one girl two papas.
I did.
That was very bold of you, Miss Amy.
I honestly, when writing it, I didn't really think about it too much.
Okay.
I just had these characters in my head, and I felt like they had to come out. But to me, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, the character of Julie, who does have Daddy and Papa Dad, she is an only child. They are incredibly, they're very sheltering in their own way, and it sort of makes sense to me that that her personality would be the product of these two very loving parents who obviously it's not very easy for two gay men to adopt a child or have a child. It had to, you have to really want a child in that situation to have one and raise them in the suburbs as she is.
Yes.
And so because of that, her personality, she is very, in a way, sheltered and very taken care of. So when something hurts her, when her friend betrays her, she reacts very, very strongly because this is a girl who's not used to it, and she's really just along on this like popularity research because it's fun for her. Because as far as she's concerned, she has everything that she wants, and it really opens her eyes. So to have those, you know, two dads who are also, I just liked the characters and they're very fun to write. To have them as her parents just made sense to me.
That's fabulous, because you made them be just normal families that were sitting behind the scenes, and you've got the two girls really exploring themselves, the world around them, and their own friendship. I call this a Diary of a Wimpy Kid for girls. And
they're not wimpy, though.
No, not at all. Thank you so much for writing the book.
Thank you for
and
having me.
Thank you so much for coming to be with us today. This is really fun.
And there is going to be a sequel.
Is there?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely. Next year.
Next year?
Spring 2011.
Wonderful.
Will be Popularity Papers 2. So
that's great news.
Keep an eye out for it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Great. Joining me now on the red carpet is a lady who has come a very long way. She is actually the librarian at the American School in New Delhi, India. I want to welcome Monica Schroeder. Welcome. This is great. Now, you've written 2 books that I've read. Is that everything that you've written so far?
Oh, I've written a 3rd one that's coming out next November.
Great.
So,
okay.
But it's not.
So I haven't missed anything yet.
No.
Okay. Now, the first one, the way I found you was with A Dog in the Wood. And I was reading 3 books about World War II at the same time. Tropical Secrets, War Games, Tropical Secrets in Cuba, War Games is in Greece, and yours was actually set in Germany, but it was more from like the German family and maybe the Nazi family perspective, which was really an interesting take.
Well, that story was based on my father's experience after World War II. He grew up in what used to be East Germany, and then when the Red Army came, I've always wondered, and he had told stories about what that was like, and then I turned this into a fiction novel. The reality was much more gruesome than actually described in the book, but it was based on the facts of his life. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have a gripping scene there with the grandparents when the boy walks into the barn and they've decided they can't take what might happen since they were Nazis and the Russians are coming in.
Yeah. That is what really happened. That they did kill themselves just before the Russian army advanced toward the village out of fear, even though the office that my great-grandfather was holding wouldn't have really been this major, but still they were, I mean, there was a lot of propaganda at the time, and so people were scared, and lots of Germans were already coming from the former Eastern German, far Eastern German was now Russia and Poland, and they were full of terrible stories of what had happened to them when the Russians came, so there was good reason to be scared.
And then you shifted. You've got a new book. This one's coming out, right?
Yeah, this is coming in November.
In November, okay, and it's Saraswati's Way. And you, I guess because of where you're living there in India, you must have seen the children all around you.
Yeah, in New Delhi, you see street children at every corner. There's a lot of misery, not just children, also people begging, living in shanty towns. And so that's one of the seeds of this book, that I started reading more about and visiting places like the train station where the second part of the book takes place. And so I learned a little bit more about the fates and the stories of these kids. I talked to a lot of these kids, and they, you know, described how they ran away from home because they were terrible circumstances, and that's how they ended at the train station. And so I created this character who has a very, very deep desire. He wants something very badly, hoping that that will also transfer to readership in America, since I think we can all relate to wanting something very
Having
badly.
a dream, yes, like that, yeah. But it's so fundamental, and it's something that our children completely take for granted.
Well, the education that he wants to have an education, because he goes to a village school where there's not much to be learned, and he's gifted in math, and so he's hoping that he could get a scholarship for which he needs money, and that's how he starts to make a plan of how he could get the money. And then, this being a story, the first obstacle comes his way, and so then he, being the hero, has to overcome the obstacle, and off we go.
But he's a great character. He has many virtues, and he's got choices. And I think it makes for a really wonderful read and an eye-opening look at what it would be like if you had been born in India instead of being born in the United States. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. And both books are really great. One is historical fiction. The other is more or less like our story today.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
Thanks.
Okay, you guys, do I have a treat for you? The lady that is sitting down next to me right now is one of the top teen authors, and her name is Ellen Hopkins. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's very exciting and wonderful to sit down with you. This is really great.
Oh, thanks so much.
How long have you been writing, Ellen?
Since I was like 9.
8? Yeah, 9. Okay. But you weren't writing this then.
No, I was not writing that then. I mean, you know, I've been writing my entire life basically, but writing for publication started about 1992, and that was freelance writing.
All right.
And then I moved into children's nonfiction.
How?
I just did a story for the newspaper that I thought would make a great children's nonfiction book. And a publisher decided they liked the idea, and I actually published 20 nonfiction books for children before.
What were you writing about?
History, science, biographies. A lot was for educational market.
Yeah.
And then some of the bigger publishers.
Did you like doing that?
I loved it. I got to meet like Robert Ballard and.
Who's Robert Ballard?
He's the guy that discovered the Titanic.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
I got to fly. I got to fly with the Thunderbirds. I got to. Yeah, it was really interesting.
Oh, so you got some adventures out
I
of it.
did.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Well, then you have made a quantum leap from that world to the world you're in now.
Absolutely.
And how did you get there?
It was a personal story. So my first novel, Crank, is loosely based on my daughter's. You know, I used to always say my daughter's story, but I've changed that to my family's story because it's really all our story. And so it was a story that I thought was important to tell on a YA level. And,
why?
Because, well, she was a teen when it happened to her. So it's, you know, Crank and this book and the one in between are about meth addiction, and she was the perfect straight A+ student who you never would have expected it to happen to.
Wow.
And so I really thought it was a hugely important story to bring to on the YA level, so that people can understand the path of this addiction and how quickly it can hit, and that it can happen to anybody.
And this Fallout is book 3 in that trilogy.
It is. It's the last of the 3, and with this one, I moved into the points of view of 3 of her children as teenagers. And I chose to do that because a lot of my readers are dealing with their parents' addictions.
Oh.
And I wanted to give them voice.
Oh, wow.
And also to give voice to these children who I actually moved into the future with this one. Because I'm writing Hunter, the real Hunter's 13, and I'm writing him at 19 in the book. And I did that for a couple reasons. One, so I could get out of the trilogy without having to keep writing more. Because I could write 10 Christina books, but I don't want to write any more Christina books. I have a lot of stories to tell.
They look for love. They look for themselves. You know, they're trying to create relationships. But I've got to tell you that I have a friend who's a librarian, and she said that the most stolen books out of her library are your books.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
They have, like, you know, because friends, the kids take them out and they give them to friends, and friends pass them on, and pretty soon nobody knows exactly where they are anymore.
Now, if you didn't have the meth addiction in your own life or in your own family as a teen, are those kids still reading it just to try to understand?
Absolutely. You know, my emails come in like 3 kinds, like, I love your books, this is my life, thank you for, you know, letting me know I'm not alone, and you allowed me to live vicariously through these characters, so now I don't have to try these things, or I can see where this path might take me and how it might hurt people around me. And so, yeah, the books, you know, I never expected it. I mean, I knew Crank was an important story, but never expected the kind of reception I've gotten from, and boys read them, and, you know, it's everybody from age 11, which is a little young, but, you know, depending on their own experience.
You're like a mother to thousands of kids.
Kind of like that.
Do you feel that?
I do. They come to me and they tell me things. I can't tell my mom this, but I have to tell somebody. Could I tell you?
Yeah, because they trust you.
They do.
They trust you. What an amazing gift you've given to them.
Yes, you know, I think that I kind of I have faith, and I believe that I'm supposed to be doing this. That it was 6 years of pain in our life. We're meant to do something. And
how is she?
She's okay.
Okay.
She's not great, but she's okay.
Okay. All right. Any advice to parents out there for if they think their child might be in this, or?
Communication is major.
Okay.
And you have to ask, and even if they say no, you have to keep asking, and you have to keep looking, and you have to keep, you know, not punishing or not judging, but looking for clues and to really understand your children. Open up the lines of communication. Read my books with them, which can do that and has.
That's great. I mean, I think there's 672 pages long. This one's not quite that, but I know one of the other ones was. I was reading through this one. Oh, and they're free verse. And that is such a quick and direct way to communicate with kids. You're an amazing person, an amazing person. And if you've got teens at home, even though these books are this thick, they just fly through them, and her voice is so wonderful and real and honest. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
It's really great to meet you.
Thank you.
If your kids have finished all the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books and you're thinking, what on earth are we going to turn to next? We have the answer for you, and it is because of the wonderful Tom Angelberger, who has joined me here today. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
And even more fun to read, The Strange Case of Origami Yoda.
That's right.
This is hilarious.
Oh, thank you very much.
It just made me laugh out loud. It was really great fun. Okay, now for those who have not had the fun of reading it yet, let's explain what you created here.
Well, so my main character, Dwight, he makes this origami Yoda, and he brings it to school, and everybody thinks it's cool at first, but the problem is he goes around shoving it in everybody's face and making it talk to them.
Oh,
and that's the sort of clueless behavior they've gotten used to from him, and that's one of the reasons that he's sort of a social misfit, outcast. But what changes everything for him is that the things that Origami Yoda says actually turn out to be very wise. And they're so wise that people begin to wonder if Origami Yoda might actually be more than just a finger puppet. Maybe he's using the Force. And so...
let's hope it's true.
Well, I hope it's true too. So two other characters decided to put together this case file. And so all the kids in school who have had any thing to do with Origami Yoda, they all write up their stories, and so they're all in the book. So we have stories from all these different kids, including the skeptic, the non-believer.
The non-believer.
This guy, not only does he not believe, he doesn't want anybody else to believe either, and he won't rest until he's proved his point. So that's how we come...
There's always one of them.
Yes, well there is. And so that's how we come to the climax of the book, where it's actually called The Duel of the Origami Yodas, when the bad guy makes his own Origami Yoda. So...
Here, that can be mine.
Oh, yes,
okay.
We'll have a duel. So lots of silliness in between.
I was very curious to see how you were going to have Yoda be wise. And when the first guy gets his pants all wet...
The embarrassing stain.
Yes. And he's going to have to go back to class and just be humiliated.
Yes.
And then Yoda totally comes through for him.
Yes, Yoda has the answer. And the answer is, all of pants you must wet. And what he means by that is, if you make all of your pants wet, nobody will notice the little stain anymore.
That's right.
So that actually saves the day for our poor guy.
I thought it was brilliant. He bounces back into class and his teacher says, I don't even want to know. I guess he was used to that from him. But you did, I have to say that I watched Dwight in action, and I thought, this guy might be smarter than he looks.
Oh, he is a lot smarter than he looks. There's a lot more to Dwight than anybody realizes. And the problem is, like me, he's got Asperger's. And he has a lot of trouble communicating and figuring out how the world works.
Wow.
And Origami Yoda ends up being his way of communicating with the world.
Wow.
And so he ends up with a very positive solution to his problems.
How wonderful that you are doing this, that you have Asperger's, that you've just said that, and that you're doing this. I mean, that is so fantastic.
Yeah, well, actually, the word Asperger's is not in the book. and I don't want
Right.
it to interfere with anybody
Oh, no.
enjoying the book as just silly fun.
Exactly.
But the
Oh.
truth, that that is the truth behind the book.
That is brilliant. Well, the book is, I mean, you laugh all the way through it.
Oh, thank
You're so hoping that Yoda is going to come through. You want to believe in Yoda the whole way. And, you know, and personally, I think that every guy deserves a girl in the end, too. So, you know, there's hope for that, too.
It does work out nicely.
Yes, it does. Tom, you did a fantastic job. Are you
thank you very
writing
much.
something else now?
Yes, my next book will be called Horton Halfpot. And it is a very, very silly story set in Dickensian England.
Wow.
So it combines my love of Charles Dickens with
Uh-huh.
my love of absolutely silly nonsense.
It sounds like a gift for us all. When does that come out?
That'll be out next spring, also from Amulet.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so
Oh,
much
absolutely.
for coming by today. It's
Absolutely.
just great to meet you.
It was great to meet you.
Really and truly, and so much fun.
Thank you very
so
much.
So much fun. And that wraps up this special edition of Books Alive from the American Library Association annual meeting in Washington, D.C. I hope you enjoyed meeting these authors. I hope you enjoyed listening to them. And I think you'll enjoy even more reading their wonderful books. For more information on these writers and others, I've got a website called abookandahug.com where you can find book suggestions for all age groups. Check it out, and thanks for watching Books Alive. I'm Barb Langridge, and come see us at the library.